Hey, what's going on? My name is Coach Lee Hopkins. My pronouns are he, him, his, and you're listening to the Patterns of Possibility podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to helping you replace harmful patterns with new possibilities. In each episode, we'll explore topics that inspire you to be yourself, live your truth, and make lasting friendships. In this episode, I have an interview with you, and this interview is over a year old, but it has aged pretty well, honestly, and I can see where I have gone right with selecting my interview guests. Now, pat myself on the back, behind the scenes, pat, pat, pat. But we talk about building connection and community through this app, this Uchi app that he's created. But first, before we start talking about the Uchi app, we talk about the process that he has gone through, the self-discovery, to learn why this app was necessary and how it solved a particular problem about being heard and understood in his life. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for listening. In this episode, we have an interview. I think I say it just like that every time. We have an interview. So we do, though. I have a guest here who has really an interesting story to share. Interesting. I'm very excited to introduce him to you. Just kidding. I don't do that. I'm going to let him introduce himself. So, Kevin Strauss, please tell us who you are, what you do, why you're here.
Hey, Lee. Well, thanks for having me on your show. I've had a chance to listen to some of your previous podcasts, and I'm loving it. So I'm hoping your audience is going to love this conversation as much as I've loved the ones you've had in the past. I'll follow your lead. I'm Kevin. I go by he, him. Those are my pronouns. And basically, it's funny. I consider myself your pretty typical American. Um, you know, college and grad school and work and all. But within all of that, I think my life has really been driven by just curiosity, and whatever topic that covers and whatever I can dig into, I just follow that path. And it's led to a lot of different places, from biomedical engineering to triathlon to emotional health and connection. And that's really what I'm focusing on now is this all important basic human need of love, connection, and belonging.
Man, that is fantastic. I got thrown off, completely thrown off, because you said I'm a typical American who also does biomedical and engineering, biomedical
Mm-hmm.
engineering too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't sound very typical. That sounds right. that sounds like you are very, very curious, and I think really smart to put that stuff together. But that doesn't stop you from wanting and sharing the basic human need of connection, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And the interesting thing is how all that work, all that school, for mechanical engineering and then a master's in biomedical engineering, all that problem solving um, experience, I really feel like that's what has led me to this idea of emotional health and human connection, and just how important it is for us human beings.
okay, I understand that. So you have a great set of problem solving skills.
Hmm.
Excellent. What is the problem?
Well, it's funny. I think the problem first, it's my problem, right? Like, I'm trying to solve my
Yeah.
problems, and
Yes.
and and I feel like my problem um, is very similar to most people's problem. Um, and I think we'll probably get into this in a lot more detail. But the problem, wow, I don't want to just give it all away, but really, I think the problem that humanity is struggling with, this is where I have landed, is is with this need for love, connection, and belonging not being met. And when a basic need is not met, then we'll do basically anything possible to ease the pain of that need not being met, or to try and meet that need in some other way. And that's where our behaviors come into play. And that's basically the first pattern probably that I noticed in myself that set me off on this journey for connection.
Yeah. So that definitely sounds familiar to me. That's why I'm doing this podcast in the first place, looking for a community, looking for connection, trying to understand what these things really mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I've discovered that, I mean, just talking about it really helps facilitate it. Let's get started there. So
Mm-hmm.
you said meet the need of we have to meet our needs if we're not getting the love, connection, and belonging. And that also sounds very familiar because I used to drink a whole lot. I used to drink to
Mm-hmm.
just kind of not have to deal with anything else, or escapism, do a lot of work, or I'd play a ton of video games, things like that. So now that I'm not feeling that way, I feel a lot better and I'm able to understand this love and connection. So I wonder, is this part of your story as well? Like, how did you meet these needs to get love, connection, and belonging? What did you end up doing to fill that gap?
So, well, a lot of different things. Thankfully, my behaviors were not the obvious destructive behaviors. Mine tended to be more on the extremely constructive side of the coin. And what I always say is the more extreme the behavior, the deeper the emotional pain. And I distinguish from emotional and mental. Those to me are two different areas of health. They interrelate, but mental health is different than emotional health, which is different than physical health, which is different than spiritual health. They all interrelate, but they're all different. And if they're not nurtured, that's when we really, if any one is not nurtured, we will really struggle.
Hmm.
So I didn't exactly answer your question right away,
That
but yeah.
I would say that's all right. I will ask it again.
Yeah. Oh, so it was what were my behaviors, or how did I deal
Yeah.
with my unmet need, right?
Because yeah, I'm super curious. You said not obviously destructive, but it's more productive. So I want to hear what that is.
Yeah, constructive. I use
Constructive.
constructive and destructive as opposed to positive, negative, good or bad. That's sort of a judgment. But I think of it as something adding to your life, or is it taking away from your life? So the kinds of constructive behaviors that I would participate in, one, going to school, college for engineering, which is, tends to be one of the more challenging degrees to earn in college. That's all subjective, but um, from what people tell me, and then going on for biomedical engineering, taking it a step further, and then within my career, it's all about um, results, because the more results I have, the more value I feel like I'm bringing to the world, and the more valuable I am in the world, the more I'll be loved. It doesn't exactly work like that, but
Hmm.
that's how my brain has been using it. And to show you how extreme that can be is through my career. At this point now, I've earned 77 patents. And patents are not a
Wow.
like, oh, I'll just go get a patent tomorrow. That's it. It doesn't just happen. Like you're buying, a coffee at the Starbucks or something. It's a lot of effort, a lot of work, and a patent, has to be innovative. It has to be unique. It has to solve a problem, and you don't just do that on a whim. And I've now earned 77. It's kind of extreme, I would say. Now it's
Uh,
good because a lot of the patents help people, right? Because they're typically implants for spine surgery or instruments to be used in spine surgery, and that's all good. It's very constructive, helping people, helping save lives and improve quality of life. But you don't have to get 77 patents to be valuable as a person.
yeah, because I don't have one patent, and I think I'm valuable as a person.
Well, and you are. You absolutely are.
uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get it. You were really looking to make it seems like a mark on the world because you wanted to share want to share your expertise and feel good in doing that because at the end of the day, the more people who know you and are affected with the things that you create, the more love you will get back. Is that what you were?
That's the idea. Again, this is
Yeah,
all done subconsciously. I've
of
only figured
course.
this out in the last couple of years. Um, but yeah, the more valuable I am to the world, and also my need to be seen and heard and understood. Again, those are all just different ways of saying my need to be loved. And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Absolutely.
really what it all comes down to, is our need to be loved. But I mentioned in my little intro, the idea of also being a triathlete. And I've been doing triathlon now for like 20 years. And you don't have to do triathlon to be physically healthy or physically fit. It's kind of extreme, right? To swim, then bike, then run. And on top of that, to do the Ironman triathlon. It's the now it all seemed like a natural progression for me, but looking
Mm-hmm.
back on it, that's my way of escaping whatever I don't want to deal with, which is my
Right.
feelings, my
Mm-hmm.
painful feelings. Because after you've done that much exercise, you're just too physically tired to do anything else,
Right.
so you're not going to deal with your feelings. So that's another way of escaping, right?
Yeah.
um, but also, doing a triathlon, doing a half Ironman, doing an Ironman, then to be seen or maybe looked up to or admired by others in society, because not everyone does an Ironman triathlon. But
Yeah. Not.
again, you don't need to be a triathlete to be physically fit and healthy.
Yes, I understand what you're saying there. Because I really am impressed with that. I'm impressed with people who can run marathons. That is something that impresses me just in general. Maybe even like 10 miles. That whatever. I'm lazy.
No, I mean, 10 miles is no joke, I mean, I would struggle to run 10 miles right now.
Yeah, so you do have you had the right idea. I mean, what you went to accomplish, it worked. So the idea was to be admired by people, and you got that done because people admired the fact that you did this. You have all these patents. You're really smart. You've put your mark on the world, but somehow it didn't seem to be enough. So
Mm-mm.
when did you discover that, or what did it look like when you found out that wasn't enough?
Well, Lee, I feel like I'm still discovering it. Like every single day, there's another layer of this
Hmm.
onion that's being peeled back. Um, but when I look back, when I really start to look back, um, the first pattern that I noticed in myself was in my late 20s, when I would just go from relationship to relationship. Like none of the relationships were working out. And being a problem solver engineer that I am, it's like, what's going on? Why do I keep, ending it with
Hmm.
one woman after the next? And where I landed on that was self-esteem. I noticed that I kept breaking up with women because of their low self-esteem. I couldn't deal with it. It was the typical obvious kind of stuff, like, oh, do I look fat in this dress? Oh, what do you want to eat for dinner? I'll do whatever you want to do. And I'm like, just, if I'm with you, I'm attracted to you. So whatever you look like, I'm into it, whether you think you're fat or whatever, I'm into it, whatever you are. But it
Yeah,
keeps coming up, and then someone who's just so wishy-washy and doesn't want to make a decision just kind of drove me crazy.
yeah,
Well, that was back. Mhm.
I can imagine too because you are the guy who gets stuff done. You decide you're going to do a thing and you go do it, and you do it to the extreme. So if they can't even get started, they can't decide which line to line up in to get started. It's got to
Right.
be really frustrating. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it is, exactly. So I would break up, and
Hmm.
and then as I started looking into self-esteem more and more, um, it occurred to me that, well, it's not just women who struggle with low self-esteem. It's also men who struggle with low self-esteem. It just presents differently. For a woman, it might be like, oh, I'll do whatever you want to do, or do I look fat in this dress, that kind of thing. And for a guy, it might be like, peeling out at a stoplight, or revving the engine, or bragging about how much money or how big their muscles are. Those are all signs
Mm-hmm.
of low self-esteem. It's an insecurity about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Definitely.
so now we're at this self-esteem mark, right? So then another pattern, I'm trying to keep with your theme, but another pattern that I noticed, and this is back again around the same time, another pattern I noticed was that most conflicts seem to be occurring when one or both people were not sharing how they truly felt or what they truly thought. And as I started to observe conversations or conflicts and arguments, it just seemed to keep coming up time and again, time and again.
So I have to
And
ask you right here. I have to ask you right
mhm,
here because I feel like we skipped over what you
okay.
discovered in the relationship. So I
Oh,
understand that you
okay.
discovered, that low self esteem for the women, but when
hmm
did you decide that I'm going to do something different?
Yeah. So it relates to the conflict story as well.
Gotcha.
And well, the funny thing is that pretty much, according to my brain, pretty much everything relates back to love, connection, and belonging. Like everything. So we've got the low self-esteem issue, and now we've got
Mm-hmm.
conflict issue. And as part of my job as an engineer at this particular company I was working at, we were charged with identifying problems in society, in community, in health, and and solving them, doing research. And this research was funded by NIH. Um, and we would win grants and do this research and explore things. So I noticed that conflict was causing a lot of problems in families, especially families with teenagers, and people weren't sharing their true selves. And I thought, what if there was a way to help people just express themselves and be heard? And as I started doing the research to create this grant, I stumbled upon again Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
actually it's Maslow's theory of human motivation, and the hierarchy of needs is just something that some marketing people came up with years later, because the hierarchy is not Maslow's. But anyway, that's beside the point. Yeah, we do have these needs for human that drive our behaviors, and the problem with the hierarchy in the pyramid is that we seem to believe that first you have to do your physiological needs, food, water, shelter, then comes safety and security. But if your food, water, shelter aren't met, then you can't move up to safety and security, and then you cannot move up to love, connection, and belonging, and you cannot move up to self-esteem, and then up to self-actualization. But that's actually not how Maslow describes it in his original paper.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you got to read the original paper, right, from 1943, which of
Well,
course I have on my phone.
of course. Yeah. No, I'm not reading that.
No, that's fine. I've done the work for you.
Yeah, you've done the work, so I'm really excited to hear what you had to say. What did you
hmm
discover?
So basically, we have all of these needs at the same time. One might be in the forefront, but they're all basic needs. So at any given time, you might be working on your self esteem, but then you might be working on your food and water. Then you might be working on your safety and security. Then you bounce back to food and water because you're hungry. Then you go up to love and connection. So they're all kind of intermixed, actually. So there's a little bit of hierarchy, but also they're intermixed, because the hierarchy
Um,
comes in when, if you're dead, right? If you don't have enough water for 3 days and you're dead, nothing else matters. So the other needs do not matter,
right,
right?
right,
But and we've seen this time and again in TV shows, movies, our own lives, that we will easily forego food, water, sleep when we get dumped by someone we really liked, or when
right,
we have a horrible argument with a family member or a boss.
right, Right.
So
So
now
the
we will
emotional.
forego our physiological need because of
Mhm.
that connection and love need. Hmm.
That makes sense. Yeah, because that's all broken. So nothing else really matters in the moment. It's just healing that
Right.
part of this. Yeah, that
Healing
makes
that
sense.
part.
So
If somebody's cutting off your windpipe, then your entire existence is about getting air. Like nothing else matters than air, you
right.
know? But if you've got air and you've got water and you've got food and you have a place to sleep and you've got shelter, which
Mm-hmm.
most people have, which actually I know that's actually not true, but in a first world country, most people do have those basic needs for the
Right.
most part. I know there are
Mm-hmm.
struggling areas, but for the most part, they have it. And
Right.
even though the reality is in the world, 80% of the world's population does not have enough food and water in a given day,
Right.
but it's the 20% that is self-destructing because their need for love, connection, and belonging is not being met. And then that's what drives their behaviors.
Interesting.
It's
Interesting.
not because they're mentally crazy and they're insane or they're mentally ill. I can do all of my engineering and do all these patents and figure out all my nutrition and exercise routine and so on. But if I'm not feeling that love and connection, then nothing else really matters. The love and connection is what's driving most of my behavior, even though mentally I'm able to do all these complex cognitive processes. Emotionally, I'm hurting.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, you're doing the complex processes, but the goal of it is to get that emotional wellness or emotional health from it. And so you weren't able to do that. And also the physiological stuff that you running 1,000 miles and swimming a billion more, all that is part of it, trying to get to that love and affection thing.
Yes, it's
Mm.
it's doing all of these things to feel valuable and worthy of love, because inside I don't feel worthy of love.
Oh yeah, well yeah, it's a work in progress,
Yes.
and I think that you'll be learning about yourself until you die. I know
Yeah, which
every
is
day.
fun, right? That's
Yeah.
all part of the fun and that's part of life. And the whole idea of health and well-being is, it's never a one-time effort, right?
Right.
You can't just
Hmm.
you can't just have a great night's sleep once and you're done with it. You can't just eat one meal, one really great healthy meal, and
Yeah.
eat like garbage the rest of the day. No, like, and you can't just have a good connection with someone one time and think, oh, I'm emotionally healthy now. No, that's not how health works. Health is an ongoing process, and you're always ebbing and flowing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely right. You have to continue on, and that's what we do. That's our meaning, that's our life, that's our motivation. So I want to
Hmm.
ask you, I'm going to go back because I this is what I kind of put together, and I just want to run it by you because I was sticking with the story with your
Hmm.
girlfriends and
Yeah,
stuff.
we can.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I was just curious. So well, what I put together was that you saw that they had low self esteem, right?
Hmm.
And but
Hmm.
you moved over to talking about how people don't share their feelings. So I
Hmm.
wonder, did your relationships explode because you decided one day that you were going to share all of your feelings at once because you were tired of all the are you this, are you that, can you make up your mind, like here's all my feelings about all those things at once.
Um, you know, I think I really just kind of avoided that altogether, and I just ended the relationship.
Wow, did you ghosted her? I'm sorry, that's
Well,
terrible.
I mean, back then there wasn't that wasn't even a thing back
Oh
in
yeah,
1997 or something, but um,
gotcha.
right? I mean, or 2001. That just
Hmm.
there were no
Yeah, yeah,
smartphones or anything. Um,
yeah.
but but yeah. But what I noticed was that I'm recognizing all of this low self esteem in partners, and I'm thinking I've got great self esteem. I'm proud of this. I'm proud of that. I've done this. I've done that. I think I'm great. I've taken these tests for self esteem. I'm like off the chart. That's all just a cover up, and it took me another 15 years to figure out that I struggle just as much with self-esteem. It just presents as like overconfidence,
Uh-huh.
but
I
it's
see.
actually a cover-up for my own self-esteem issues. And then, and I'll tie this also back to the Maslow's work, is self-esteem is a different area from love, connection, and belonging. And we know that it's not a straight hierarchy, it's not a linear progression, but what I've come to understand is that you can't just give someone self-esteem, right? You can't give someone a gold star on their report, or tell them how, wonderful they are and how beautiful they are and how athletic they are, and think, "Oh, you should have great self-esteem. You're a wonderful person." That doesn't work. So what I've come to understand, or what I believe anyway, is that it is our need for love, connection, and belonging. It's that support system that if we do not have it, we are going to desperately struggle to build our self esteem. So here's a little bit about how I think that works. And
Mm-hmm.
this is just, Kevin theory at this point. But
Okay.
basically, when you do something, you try something new or whatever, and you do well, then you celebrate and you're happy, you feel good, and your support system, I'm air quoting, your support system, your friends and family celebrate with you. Woohoo, yay, Lee did it, he's great. But when
Yay,
you
thank you.
right? But when you try something and you fail, it feels terrible, right? You didn't get a goal in soccer. Cracked the notes when you sang a song at the school play. You failed a test. I mean, geez, I don't think I went through a semester in college where I didn't fail at least one test. And you feel
Right.
bad about yourself. But if you have a support network who truly loves you and values you, then when you do fail, they're there to console you, and they'll be there for you. But unfortunately, too many people don't have that. Too many people, when they fail at something, and I'm talking about kids, I'm talking about like
Oh
under
yeah.
6 years old, or under 10 years old. When you fail, too often a parent will say, "Well, you should have never done that anyway. You're not smart enough to do that. You're not strong enough to do
Oh
that. You're
yeah.
not pretty enough to do that. You're not athletic enough to do that. You shouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
even tried." And then it only takes a few failures and reactions like that, you're not even going to try anymore. And if you never try anything and succeed, you're going to really struggle to build your self-esteem.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds very familiar to me. I talk about confidence, direction, and resilience, and confidence is
Mm-hmm.
definitely the first pillar. You need to get confidence, and there are some ways that you can do that, and it's really helpful when you have a support system, especially when you fail, because those things really they're really difficult to get out of if you can't
Mm-hmm.
see that you can try again and that there's a new day for you,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a reason too, because there are people who support you and they cherish you. So,
Mm-hmm. And they're still going to love you even if
hmm
you do fail. But unfortunately, too many people don't have that. I mean, I've been witness to so many interactions between parents and their kids, whether it's, out at a grocery store, at a restaurant, in my own family, like extended family,
uh-huh,
where the parent is berating the child in front of everybody.
yeah,
And,
that's
how am I going to ever amount to anything if I don't even get love from the person who's supposed to love me more than anyone, my parent,
right.
my
It's a
family?
s- it's a
And
scam.
that, it's a scam. It's a scam, right?
Yeah,
And that causes pain. It
yeah,
doesn't cause mental pain. It causes emotional pain. And it's
right.
when that basic need is not being met that causes pain. And a
Yeah.
human will do anything to avoid or ease their pain.
Oh
So in the
yeah.
absence of knowing how to connect, they turn to behavior.
Oh yeah. So then behaviors like destructive and constructive
Yep.
behaviors, like those kind of
Yep.
things. Yeah.
Yep.
So
You
there's
could be
a
a heroin addict, or you could be, Steve Jobs.
yep. Yeah. Just something to do. Basically, you need
Something.
something to do. Yeah, to fill that gap.
Yeah.
So then
Yes.
you've noticed all these. gaps in communication or opportunities to help people communicate. And
Hmm.
so I'm going back to the relationship thing because
Hmm.
I feel like we move away from that. We move away from that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll bring it back.
We did. We moved away from it a little bit because the thing I want to get is that the driver behind this whole thing, and sure, you see other people suffering. It happens. I mean, we see other people suffering. You know,
Hmm.
I I see people asking for change all the time, and I'm like, well, I can't do anything about this, or I can't do anything about that. But I'm not going to dedicate my life to making their life better. My
Hmm.
theory is that when you grow up, you treat the person that you were as a kid, especially when you have all the intelligence and the know-how and the drive to do those things. You kind of treat the problem that you had as when you were younger. So that's what I'm actually
Right.
doing. The patterns of possibility was is facilitating connection because I didn't get that, and I want to make sure other people get that. And
Hmm.
so I wonder if that showed up like you didn't get that. So you didn't talk about, being a kid, but I see that
Hmm.
in the connection with your partners. You didn't really get that because you were both on different pages. And so kind of stepped
Yeah.
away and just like, yeah, I don't think this is like this was for you to create something to help facilitate connection for you, right? That's
Yes.
what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yes. So just to try and to button up the relationship part for you, just because I feel like I'm not trying to avoid. I'm just sort of trying to create the whole picture here. But really, with
I,
the relationships back then, I
yeah.
wouldn't even go near the actual feelings at this point. I would
Wow.
just I would just get out of the relationship and don't get into another relationship with someone with low self-esteem. The reality of this, 15, 20 years later, figuring this out,
Mm-hmm.
what I think is going on, I'm pretty darn sure, is the whole like attracts like. So
Uh-huh.
I'm attracting women with low self esteem because of my own low self esteem.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then, in order for me to subconsciously try and build my self esteem up, because I'm not getting the love and connection that I really need, and I'll get to that in 1 second, um, to try and build my self esteem up, I get another patent. I do another triathlon. I go on another
Ah.
big backpacking trip. I just find another woman to date and that in a month. And that's my cycle. That's my pattern. Do more things in my life to show that I'm valuable to the world so that I'm valuable to a great woman.
Mm-hmm.
But deep down, I am totally struggling on this need to feel heard, to feel seen, to feel valued just for being
Uh-huh.
me. And
Right.
that's where I am with the connection now. And you mentioned, childhood, and it all goes back to childhood. And I'll give you a quick little example of how it would go in my family. So my parents are wonderful people. I always knew that they loved me. They always supported me. But they also criticized every single thing that I did, and they neglected me all the time. So a emotionally neglected me. I mean, physically, I had, food, water, shelter. I was alive and everything. So physically, those needs
You
were
were
met.
alive.
Yeah. But emotionally, I was not, those needs were not being met, even though I knew that they loved and supported me. But if I would come home from school and I would say, and my mom would say, "How was school?" I say, "Fine, but I have a report to do, or I have a composition to write, about, I don't know, about, my favorite vacation." And I would tell her, I was like, "Yeah, this is the assignment. I got to write a whole page on a vacation that really meant a lot to me, and I'm really stressed out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't think of anything, and I'm just stuck and I'm lost." My mom's response would be, Oh, well, when I was a child, I had to write a composition one time, and it was only supposed to be one page, but I ended up writing 2 pages, and it was so good I got an A on it. And my teacher gave me the A, and she was so happy with me that she asked me to read it in front of class. So the next day I read my paper in front of class, and all the other kids cheered me, and they congratulated me, and they told me how wonderful the story was. So then later the principal gave me an award for being such a good student. And then that turned into, and she would go on for 20 minutes about her story about writing a paper, when I'm
Wow.
the one with the problem that she completely ignores.
And also, I think makes it worse because she set another bar for you to jump over. Wow,
You're right. You're
that
right. So
all of
then
that.
she's telling me I'm not good enough, which means in translation to a child's brain, but really any brain, is if I'm not good enough, that means I'm not worthy of love. And
Right.
love is a
Hmm.
basic need. So this neglect, and not even just, it's not being acknowledged, not having my feelings validated, like
Hmm.
ever,
Yeah.
that causes pain. That causes stress. That causes your body to release ungodly amounts of cortisol. And when you have cortisol, going through your body this often, right?
Yeah.
Then it changes your brain chemistry and other chemistry in your body. So what my whole point of that is that when we shame, judge, degrade, or neglect somebody, it causes emotional pain. And that's trauma. That's emotional trauma. We say, oh, you're so sensitive, or put on your big boy pants, or suck it up, or we're just giving you a tougher skin. No, we are harming children and adults. I mean, it happens in the workplace, it happens in school. We're harming people emotionally. We're giving people the message that they're not worthy of love. And when you are constantly not feeling worthy of love or not feeling loved, and again, love, connection, a sense of belonging, when you constantly feel that way and you're in that constant pain and you don't know how to get that connection,
Right.
that's when you turn to behavior. And we see
Yep.
it all the time: drugs, alcohol, video games, you name it.
Whatever. Just anything to. Just
Anything.
anything. Yeah.
Work. How many workaholics are there? We turn to
Yeah.
food. I mean, how many people eat their feelings?
Um. Many. Like, yes, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I'm being attacked here. But
No,
I
I'm
want to go back.
empathizing. I'm empathizing.
Yeah, no, yeah. I appreciate that you came back to clean that up to make sure that I didn't
Did it
like
make
feel. Yeah,
sense?
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
like the feeling thing, the
Mm-hmm.
feeling thing. Anyway, I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk about your emotional and mental health. Now, a
Mm-hmm.
little earlier, you made a distinction between the two, and you talked a whole lot right now about emotional health. So, what's the
Mm-hmm.
difference between the two? Because I would listen to that and think, well, that's mental health. You're being mean, you're hurting their feelings, you're damaging them that way. So, what's the difference between those two?
Yeah. So the definitions that I use are a little different than mainstream. So I think of emotional health as a person's ability to give and receive love. And by love, I mean love, connection, sense of belonging. So give and receive love. Whereas emotional intelligence is a person's ability to recognize, understand, and manage their emotions. Giving and receiving love is different than managing your emotions. Okay. And mental health, I see mental health as a person's ability to think clearly, focus, concentrate, perform cognitive tasks. And there are times when you're so upset because your boss just yelled at you, let's say, that you can't even concentrate on your work. So now your emotional health was so compromised that it impacts your mental health. Another quick example of that is um, school children. A lot of children struggle to focus and concentrate in class because they're coming to school emotionally traumatized by their own home environment.
Hmm.
And when your emotional brain, it's called amygdala hijack. So the amygdala is in the brain. So all this is actually occurring in the brain, but just because it occurs in the brain doesn't mean it's not emotional, right? I mean, we go to the heart for emotion, but it's actually happening in your brain mostly. I
Right.
mean, there's your gut stuff, but anyway. we know from the neuroscience that 95% of your actions and behaviors are driven by your subconscious mind, which is where your emotions are rooted. And
Yeah.
only 5% of your actions and behaviors are coming from your conscious mind, which is
Mm-hmm.
where your cognitive process, it's your frontal lobe, where your cognitive processes are happening. So we seem to think as humans that we can think our way through everything, our mental ability.
Yeah.
How's that working for us?
Well, not well.
Not well.
Not
And I'm
well.
sorry, but Freud was basically wrong. I would go straight up for, and actually we already know that most of Freud's theories have all been proven wrong, but we're still
Hmm.
following Freud's, psychoanalysis approach to modern psychology, psychiatry.
And so, what was the psychoanalysis approach that you're talking about that we focus on, we're still using? That's
That
what I
our brain
understood.
is broken and we need to be able to think our way through our problems and
Ah,
think our way through. Come on, Lee. You know it's not good to be drinking that much alcohol every night. You know
yeah.
better than that. Stop drinking. Just make yourself stop. You can stop.
Yep. I
How does
used to
that
tell
work?
people that. I used to tell people when I smoked cigarettes too, I'm like, yeah, they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna like, you're gonna die from that. Yeah, I am. And I continue
Mm-hmm.
to smoke because, yeah, of course, I mean, I know that's gonna happen, but I still have that need to do the thing. So I'm going to do it.
It's yes,
It's not
and for
rational.
you, it may not. It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
That is what you found worked to survive your environment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a broken mental process. Your brain is not broken. You're not a bad person. You're
Right.
not weak. You don't have horrible self-control or willpower. You just found a way to ease your pain. It just so happens that that way is fairly destructive to your physical existence.
Yeah. You just adapted to your environment.
You
So
adapted. I did triathlon. You smoked cigarettes and drank alcohol. Whatever.
yes.
It's all the same.
I have to laugh at that because the juxtaposition of two, like you did something really constructive and I was like pretty destructive. But
Right, but but
there's
look,
no just
but
it's
see
just
how many
funny.
people burn out. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. And I
Hmm.
coach triathletes too. I coach endurance athletes on the side, and I can't tell you how many people in the endurance athlete community or CrossFit community or bodybuilding community, um, any of these extreme types of activities or taken to the extreme, that the
Hmm.
person like, oh, thank God for triathlon because it solved my alcoholism problem or it solved my drug addiction problem. But then they went so obsessive with the triathlon, and that can only be done for so long because what typically happens is you get injured or you burn out. And now what are you going to do to deal with your pain in your emotional trauma that you haven't dealt with?
Mm.
You end up usually the next step is you go back or you go one step further to like depression.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That's usually a place that people go.
Yeah. So emotional health and emotional intelligence, mental health, those are all
Hmm.
three things that are different. And so
Yes.
the people that you're talking about just a moment ago about the triathlon, the people who get pretty obsessive about something, they need more emotional health. Is that where we're going with that? Or
They need to nurture their emotional health. Just like they would nurture their physical health with another workout, they need to nurture their emotional health. And that is something that we don't do as humans.
so then how would we do that? How would we go about doing that?
Any way that you can connect, it's like what you talk about a lot is however we can authentically connect, love, have a sense of belonging, find community, and feel truly heard and seen and valued.
Yeah. So
That's what nurtures our emotional health. And then when your emotional health is nurtured, your behaviors naturally improve because behaviors are only symptoms.
behaviors are only symptoms. I like that. Yeah. So emotional health and connecting with other people. Back to where we're talking about what we really think and feel. You said that that
Yes.
was one of the key things that was missing from a connection, is talking about how we really think and feel. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest problems in with humanity is that, we don't really share how we're thinking and especially how we're feeling, and it's basically conditioned out of us almost from day one of life.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking about, when you're a kid or you're a baby and you're crying, like, stop crying, stop crying. You're crying so much. You're just trying to
That's
get your needs
exactly
met.
it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And we do it even on day one. A baby's crying. What do? We say, shh, shh, you're okay. You're okay. So we're shushing the child. We're telling that child, do not emote. I don't want to hear you emote. I don't want to hear you cry. And then we
Mm-hmm.
add insult to injury by saying, you're okay. We're telling that child how to feel. You're fine.
Mm-hmm.
So what we could be doing instead is saying something like, I hear you. I'm here for you.
Ah,
Just something
yes.
simple like that. And just be there with them as they cry. And that's it. That's all.
Yeah. It definitely is more validating and connecting, and they will calm down themselves because they can feel that energy. I mean, you're the parent after all, you're
Oh,
close
I
to
just got
them.
chills. Yes, you
Yeah.
got it.
All of
You
that
got it.
stuff.
Hmm.
So, because we are having trouble connecting with other people that's telling our
Hmm.
truth, our thoughts and our feelings to each other, social media has gone crazy. We exaggerate this and that. We try to be people that we're not, definitely inauthentic. And you have come up with something that is a solution for that. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are definitely some valuable elements to social media, but also look through your feed on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and look at all of the posts that people make and how few engagement there is on most posts. Right? Most posts on Twitter don't have a single reply, retweet, or whatever they do on Twitter. You know, I mean, most posts don't have any kind of engagement. So we're all screaming to be heard. We're all screaming to be seen. It's this huge
Mm,
competition just to be seen. And social media is a great platform for that. But most people still don't feel seen. And we have enough research showing how detrimental social media is. So,
yeah.
what I've done is, again, I'm not against social media, but I think there's another way that we can use the internet to really help foster authentic connection. And that's with this app called Uchi that I created. That's spelled UCHI. And Uchi, the Japanese pronunciation is Uchi, but I just say Uchi. And in Japanese, it means in group or inner circle. So the Uchi app, it's not a social media, but it is a social platform. Because whatever you do on Uchi, only your Uchi friends have access to what you do on Uchi. Nobody else. There's nothing public about Uchi. You can't search for a person. That doesn't even exist on the platform. The only way to invite someone into your Uchi, to your inner circle, is to know their email address and invite them by email. That's the
Okay.
only way. And just another quick little tidbit is you can only have up to 50 friends in your Uchi network. Because the reality is, and the research is there, that a human being can really only maintain like 100 to 150 relationships at a time.
Mm-hmm.
That's in the research. So we just landed on 50 for now. Maybe it'll change in the future. But most people I talk to are like, I don't even have 50 friends that I want to invite.
Right. Yeah, I certainly don't. I
And
certainly
that's
don't.
the point. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the point because it's the people who matter most to you that have the greatest impact on your emotional health,
Right.
right? So if you have a great conversation with a stranger, at Starbucks, that's awesome. That's a great thing. But if they reject you and they don't want to engage with you in a conversation, you don't really care because you don't really know them. But if you try to engage a family member or a parent or
Mm-hmm.
a partner, you try to engage them and they reject you, it really hurts. And that's your
Yes.
emotional health being harmed.
Right. So then what do we do about that on Uchi? So you talk about us being closer and connected, more intimacy. Then
Hmm.
how do we connect with each other on that. I send my
Yeah.
friend an email, they respond, and then what happens? What do we do?
Right. So the email sent through the app. So basically the app is all about making conversations easier so you can dig into whatever these topics are to have deeper conversation about real topics. So what we've done is we created this huge database of questions, and you just get on the app and you answer questions in any order, any topic, however you want to do it. There's no order. It's not therapy. It's not some strict way to go through it. You just pick questions and you answer them, and they cover all kinds of topics. And then your friends answer questions, and then you read each other's answers. And now we're both on the same page because we're talking about the same topic. It's the same question that we're answering. And we also need to be sharing to a comparable level of depth or intimacy. So I kind of went a little out of order there for
Uh,
you. So let me explain.
okay.
So what I think is needed for real connection to occur is that one, both parties need to be talking about the same topic or subject matter. And two, they need to be talking to a similar level of depth or intimacy. So if you come home from work and your spouse is there and your spouse is like, hey, how was work? And they're like, oh, it's fine, no big deal, I'm tired. And then they say, well, how was your day? And you say, oh, I did this, I did that, and then I went here and I went there and I did this. That's a disconnect.
Oh
Right? We're
yeah,
not
definitely.
on the same level. So we're not going to feel the connection.
I used to do just that. I wouldn't know what to say because I've never really been asked. All it is just, oh, well, my day was a regular day. I wasn't paying attention to anything I was doing at all. So now I talk about the food I had, and how long it took me to cook it, where I got it from, all this stuff. Just talk about the normal things because it's a surprise, but your friends and your close connections want to hear that. They want to know
They do
about you.
want to hear it. And
Yeah.
and as you talk about it, you start thinking of more things. And as they're listening, you feel like, wow, they're really listening to me. They must love me. And it
Hmm.
feels good. And then they add to it, and then you add to it. And now you get this huge oxytocin release, and it feels great, and you're bonding. That's connection. So that's
Yes.
what we're trying to do or that's what we are doing on Uchi, because you answer a question, I answer the same question, and we read each other's answers, and now we can have conversation all in writing, on the platform. We just have conversation. And
Nice.
it's just an amazing way, when it's only the written word. There's no pictures, there's no video, there's no audio, and there's no like button. So it's all about your it's all an opportunity for you to articulate and share, and you have time to do it because it's the written word and you do it on your own time. This isn't a
Hmm.
text message back and forth. This is
Yeah.
you just submit an answer, you submit a comment, and they can read it. The one big rule on Uchi is you cannot read someone's answer unless you've already answered that question yourself.
Yeah. You don't want it to be kind of lopsided or what
Exactly.
offside. Yeah, you don't want that to happen. That was where I was gonna interject and ask that kind of
Okay.
question because we talked
Hmm.
about the emotional intimacy level. Asking how your day was, it was fine, versus here's everything I did for today and last week. So how do you
Hmm.
like monitor that? How do you have a something to help them connect better?
Well, it's the questions, by asking questions that probe what we like to say is just below normal surface level conversation.
Ah,
Surface
okay.
level conversation is how was your day? What'd you have for dinner? Are you going to be working late tonight? Oh, did you catch that football game last week? Oh, that was a doozy. That's fine,
Yeah.
but that's surface level. Some
Mm-hmm.
of the questions, actually, I'll bring up the app right now.
Oh,
Um,
fun,
on my
fantastic.
phone. Well, not for you, but for me, because I'm not sharing my screen right now.
Oh yeah.
But I'll just read a couple. They're all over the place. Here's a question: if you could change anything about your personality, what would it be and why?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another question: what are your hobbies? Go anywhere with that. Another question I had, for an experiment I did after George Floyd was murdered, was how do you identify?
Mm.
Go for it. However you want to identify, just let me know. Just like you allowed me to introduce myself today,
Yeah.
How,
Yeah.
how do you identify? How do you want me to know you?
Fantastic. That's definitely validation right there from the very beginning. Who are you? Who do you identify as? So I can follow your lead. I really like those
Yeah.
questions. They're all about making the values connection. Where do you spend your time for the hobbies and just getting to know other people on a not too death level. Like you're not asking for emotional traumas. You're not asking for those kind of things. That's way too much. We just
Way too
wanna
much.
we just want to be friends with each other, closer than acquaintances, but if not each other's psychologists.
Oh, absolutely. No, you're totally getting it. And we really avoid those controversial questions, like how do you feel about abortion, or what's your like that's not what Uchi's about. Uchi's
Hmm.
just about having an opportunity to share your perspective on the world and be heard by the people who matter most to you.
I really like that. I like that. That sounds very beautiful. Yeah, it sounds very beautiful. So, um, you've mentioned to me that Uchi is available, and I'm very excited. I know exactly who I'm going to invite on it. I've got five people in mind. So I'm going to ask them if they'll go for it. I really hope they do because I really want to connect with them as a coach, as a friend, and just everything. So,
Yeah. That's what it's
yeah,
there for. We just want to provide a tool to help you in your life, however you want to use it.
yeah, we currently have a group chat, but it is kind of it's all over the place.
It's
It's all
hard
over
to
the
keep
place.
track of the conversations, right? But
Yeah.
On Uchi, for example, let's say we both answer the question, how do you identify? Well, and we're friends on Uchi, so we can see each other's answers. So I can make a comment on your answer, and you and I can have a whole conversation under your answer to that question.
Wow.
Okay. But then you might comment on my answer to the same question, and you and I can have a whole conversation under my answer for the same question. And it's all very nice and, siloed. So it's easy to get back to.
Yes, beautiful. Because I know that in text messages, we have two different conversations going on at once. It just always happens. At least two
Hmm.
different conversations. So
It's
that's
really hard to keep track.
yeah, it's very precise and it really shows exactly, um, like one side or one person's point of like it doesn't get mixed up in between your ideas and their ideas. It's very clear what they expressed and what you expressed. The,
Yes.
you also mentioned that this app is for coaches. I just mentioned coaches and other things. So it's for more than just individuals as well. There's other uses for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Uchi is a free app available on, Apple and Android. Um, Download today. Um, it's purple icon with a U. That's the little, you know, app icon. So it's free for you to use as much as you want. Go for it, right? But if you want to come up with your own questions for people that you're working with, now the people that you're working with could be your family, it could be your clients as a coach, it could be your students if you're a teacher, it could be your employees if you're a manager, right? And it's a way, and then you can come up with your own questions and get the group having conversation and connection that doesn't interrupt their day. And in fact, it can even
Hmm.
be part of whatever exercise and activity you're doing anyway. Like if you had a topic of the week for your clients, your coaching clients, then come
Right.
up with 4 or 5 questions specific to that and specific to your clients. And nobody else has access to what you do. We call this an Uchi tribe, and even your Uchi friends do not have access to your Uchi tribe activity unless they're
Hmm.
in the Uchi tribe. And
Hmm.
anyone in the Uchi tribe does not have access to anything else you're doing on the platform. It's only what you're doing in that tribe together. So it's very,
Fantastic.
very private.
Yes. And in a day and age like this, we absolutely want that. And privacy will allow us to feel more secure to share what we want to share. So
Exactly.
I really heard this example of, or the idea of having your managers, having managers use this to connect with their employees, is my job has just become remote permanently. So I know that must have happened for a lot of people. And so this would be a great way to connect with us, keep us connected so we can actually talk to each
Absolutely.
other. As some people
Because
have been hired, I have no idea
oh,
who they
sorry.
are. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally interrupted you. My
I
apologies.
don't have any more words. Go ahead. I'm fine.
See, this is why Uchi is actually good for me because it's hard to interrupt someone when you're just writing on your own. But when you were verbalizing, I interrupt, and that's me being a bad listener, really. But I get excited, so that's my only excuse. But it's
Yeah.
still not an excuse. It's still bad, Kevin. Bad Kevin. Um, and now I lost my train of thought. So and it's a different kind of platform than a Slack channel or group message or Google Hangout or Facebook page. It's totally private. There's no advertising, and you guide the conversation as the Uchi tribe leader. You would guide the conversation with the questions that you ask.
Yes, that's fantastic. Go out and grab Uchi. It's available right now on
Mhm.
Android and Apple platforms. So find your friends, not strangers. Thank you so much for coming on. You have a wealth of information. I really appreciate the scientific approach that you have. Sometimes people will look at things like this and think, well, it's all about emotion, but actually there's science to it. And there's a reason why we feel the way we do and think the way we do. So it is refreshing to have that point of view, as well as the human part that you talked about, how it really affected you in your life. So, can you tell us where we can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for seeing both sides of that because ultimately, you know, all this science and my intellectualizing of this and getting to Uchi is really just my way of little Kevin saying, screaming, I just want to be heard. Just listen to me. And that's what I wasn't getting from my parents. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
spun out, through, I'm almost 52 years old now. So I'm still dealing and I'm still working on this. But anyway, if you want to get in touch with me, I'm more than happy to connect on LinkedIn. I think you'll probably have the link in the show notes. And
Absolutely.
also through uchiconnection.com. That's our website. And you can just go to the contact page there and I'll see that.
And I really would love to have you back again as a guest. Want to talk more about Maslow's? I've got ideas and thoughts already. So I wrote a bunch of stuff down. I'm really excited to explore these. You said spiritual health and some other health, I think, some other things. But you said a bunch of things, and I think it'd be great to unpack them. So thanks again for
Yeah,
coming.
that'd be
Really
fun.
appreciate it. Yeah. So
Thank
we'll
you,
talk again
Lee. I
soon.
really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Take care.